Texas sets records for COVID-19 deaths and hospitalizations, a spike as schools across the state make plans to reopen.
We're dying to go back to work, but we are not willing to risk death to go back to work.
How state guidelines have Texas teachers facing questions about what's safe for students and themselves. Texas paid their unemployment benefits, but now the state wants the money back.
I don't know how I'm going to repay it. I don't work.
Why the state's mistake has some unemployed Texans facing an unexpected expense. And despite coronavirus concerns, there's strong turnout for the runoff election. We'll look closer at some of the big races bringing Texas voters to the polls. Hello, and thank you for joining us for State of Texas. I'm Josh Hinkle, and today I'm joining you from my home studio. It's part of our effort to follow social distancing guidelines amid the coronavirus concerns, and those concerns are rising this week. Texas set new records for cases and deaths from COVID-19. For the first time, the state topped more than 100 deaths in a day. Hospitalizations also reached new highs. More people are being tested, but the rate of positive tests is also going up, passing 15%. The growing strain on hospitals led Governor Greg Abbott to order counties to suspend elective surgeries. The ban affects more than 100 counties across Texas. You see them highlighted here in red on this map. The counties in dark red, like Travis County, had previously been ordered to suspend elective surgeries. The order is to help make sure there are enough hospital beds for COVID-19 patients. The governor warned that the spike in COVID-19 cases will likely lead to an increase in the death toll, but he also said it's important to keep the state open.
When you look at the number of people who have been hospitalized over just the past couple of weeks, you can see that there may be more fatalities coming. What we need to do is we need to take action now. The thing about people wearing face masks, and the reason why I issued the face mask requirement, is that if everyone does wear a face mask, everyone can go into work wherever they may work. It could be a grocery store, it could be an office building, it could be any place. And that's the reason why we do that, because if you do wear a face mask, it will reduce the transmission of COVID-19, and that will bend the curve of this spike that we've seen.
The spike is happening at the same time Texas schools are considering plans to reopen in the fall. On Tuesday, the Texas Education Agency updated its guidelines for reopening. Now teachers across the state are weighing in. Concerns from them range from personal safety to how to enforce health protocols recommended by the TEA. For a closer look, we turn to our Maggie Glenn.
Josh, most of the teachers I spoke with all made a similar point. They say they want to be able to see and teach their students in person, but a lot of them are not sure if the pandemic will be under control enough to do so this coming fall.
How do we maintain a 6-foot social distancing level in our classrooms?
The Texas Education Agency's most recent guidelines have left teachers like August Plock with questions. The TEA is requiring every district to offer daily in-person classes in addition to online options. The guidelines also require students 10 years old and up to wear masks. The Dallas ISD superintendent says families are expected to comply.
We're not going to get in a tussle with the family, but we're going to expect it.
But it's left to the faculty to enforce these rules.
I don't know how much any of you have tried to get a 6th, 7th, or 8th grader to do something for almost 8 hours a day, but good luck getting them to keep their masks on and stay away from people for 8 hours a day.
Teachers are worried about the health and safety risks of in-person classes for students and employees.
We're dying to go back to work, but we are not willing to risk death to go back to work.
The president of Education Austin, a teachers union, is questioning whether the state's education commissioner can really withhold funding from schools that don't offer on-campus learning.
This is blackmail. He is forcing us to go in terms of going to risky places and challenge our funding. That money is not Mike Morass. That money is our taxpayers.
The union proposes that Austin ISD hold only online classes the first 9 weeks of the fall semester and assess week by week before deciding to open up campuses. If all else fails, they're telling teachers simply not to show up to in-person classes in the fall. Plock says he feels stuck in the middle, being both a parent and a teacher.
I recognize the best way to teach our students is in classroom, but I also recognize that it may not be safe for us to do that right now. And I know that there are a lot of teachers who are very scared about coming back into the classroom right now.
But says he'll be ready to teach in person if he must.
I guess I probably have those same fears myself, but at the same time, I recognize that I may be called on August 13th to start school.
Some districts in Texas will be allowing their higher risk teachers to teach online from their classrooms and let other teachers in that school handle the in-person student learning. For State of Texas, I'm Maggie Glenn.
If schools reopen in the fall, most will likely have students carrying COVID-19 on campus. That's what a UT researcher said during a virtual meeting of the Austin City Council. Dr. Lauren Ansel-Myers said if the virus keeps spreading like it is right now, a school with 500 students would see close to 20 students show up infected in the first week. But behavior like wearing masks could help make a difference.
We can and we have slowed the transmission of the virus through policies and especially through the decisions we make. And right now, we are in a very kind of precarious moment with respect to the integrity of our healthcare systems and also with respect to how feasible it's going to be to open schools in the fall. And so, it's our responsibility to make the right decision.
The TEA's guidelines for reopening include health screenings, masks, and personal protective equipment. Many colleges also have plans to bring students back on campus this fall. One university is already testing what in-person classes will be like. Texas Tech University opened its doors to students last week for the first time since the campus closed in March. 350 students returned to campus for a limited number of summer courses. It's a way for the university to test protocols they plan to use in the fall. The results could influence how other colleges in Texas move forward.
Other university systems here in the state who have maybe delayed doing something similar because of the current rise in cases everywhere, and especially among college-age kids, young people, and they're holding off. They're looking at Texas Tech to see how it goes. Granted, 350 students is a fraction of their 10,000 plus they have enrolled for this summer session, and those 350 will be spread across 30 classes, and these are classes that are hard to do virtually, science labs, performance-based art, things like that. But yeah, they'll be watching, although there is a lot of skepticism that regardless of how this summer session shakes out as far as if there are COVID cases that result, it won't change the plans for fall for Texas Tech or other universities as far as maybe not having or having in-person classes.
Texas Tech plans to begin fall semester classes on August 24th. However, the university did decide to cancel all of its study abroad programs this fall due to coronavirus concerns. People who need help paying their bills get a new bill from the state.
I was depending on this money to pay my bills, and now I can't. And I don't know what to do.
Why a mistake by the state has some unemployed Texans facing an unexpected expense. Plus, a package of much-needed stimulus money is stuck on Capitol Hill. We get answers from the state's senior senator about the timeline for the next round of relief funding. New claims for unemployment are rising across the country. 1.3 million Americans filed first-time unemployment claims last week. An additional 1 million people filed claims through the new federal Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program aimed at freelancers and the self-employed. The uptick in unemployment comes as states like Texas back off reopening plans amid the coronavirus concerns. Last week, more than 117,000 Texans applied for unemployment. That's an increase of just over 21% from the week before. Since mid-March, more than 3.7 million Texans have filed for unemployment. That's more than 5 years of claims in just 4 months. The Texas Workforce Commission paid out over $18 billion in benefits during that period. But some people who received those benefits might now face an unexpected bill. A mistake led the state to overpay millions of dollars to unemployment recipients. And as our Wes Rappaport shows us, now the state wants its money back.
I applied for unemployment. They accepted me. They said I was eligible.
Ashley Cates was forced to stay home from her job at a convenience store and restaurant when childcare for her 2 kids closed due to the pandemic. The state approved her unemployment claim in April.
They even sent me the letter showing how much my weekly benefits were. They even showed that their determination was that I was temporarily laid off due to a presidential declared disaster of the COVID-19.
Last week, the Texas Workforce Commission sent her a letter stating she was overpaid and owed close to $1,800 back to the state, money she already spent.
I don't know how I'm going to repay it. I don't work. I stay at home to take care of my kids. I was depending on this money to pay my bills, and now I can't. And I don't know what to do.
The Texas Workforce Commission says cases like Kates's make up less than 2% of the total unemployment claims and overall funding sent to Texans during the pandemic.
Occasionally, TWC will make a mistake, but based on past audits from the Department of Labor for 2019, the number of mistakes made solely by TWC was less than 0.5%.
Kates has tried reaching the agency's ombudsman, its executive director, and has called close to 24 times, only to get booted out of the phone system due to high call volumes.
This has put me in a really big bind.
I'm Wes Rappaport for State of Texas.
The Texas Workforce Commission tells us that those 46,000 overpayment claims add up to about $32 million. A lot of Texans are hoping Congress clears the way for a second stimulus check from the feds.
We will take up and pass another COVID-19 response bill. What the components of it are, I can't tell you.
We get answers from the state's senior senator about the plans for the next round of coronavirus relief. And it's the biggest race on the runoff ballot. Why the Democratic race for U.S. Senate even has a key Republican getting involved. The race for U.S. Senate tops Tuesday's ballot for Texas Democrats. Air Force veteran MJ Hagar and State Senator Royce West are battling for the nomination. Hagar voted Thursday and talked about concerns many people have about voting during the pandemic.
You know, it's pretty ridiculous that we have to do this in person because we have a governor and a legislature that can't seem to figure out, unlike 34 other states have been able to do, how to let us vote by mail safely and securely, but here we are because it's just too damn important to let them scare us into silence.
West says his decades of experience in the state legislature make him the best candidate for the job. He spoke Friday during an online interview with our media partners, the Texas Tribune.
I have been in a Republican-dominated legislature most of my public servant career, but I've been able to get things done. And the only way you can get things done is to work across the aisle and make certain you develop coalitions based on interests. I've been able to do that.
Whoever wins the Democratic nomination will take on incumbent Senator John Cornyn in November. In the past week, Cornyn's campaign has put added focus on West. They've run ads against him and even highlighted a poll showing him gaining ground. That made us wonder why, so our John Engel asked the senator to explain.
Your campaign has seemed to get a little bit more involved in the runoff in the last couple of weeks. We saw the ad buy in the last couple of days. Why the involvement at this stage, and your response to MJ saying that you want Royce to win? What would you say to that?
Well, I'm not voting in the Democratic runoff, so I'm not going to have a vote in who wins and who loses. But I've been frankly a little astonished at how bad a job the candidates have done identifying who they are and what they believe. And so it's good to get a little bit of clarity there with in terms of where they stand on various issues. I think both of them are pretty much out of the mainstream of Texas values and voters, but I'm glad to see them clarifying some of that.
President Trump signaled support for another round of stimulus for Americans who are struggling in this time. What do you know about that process, and what can you tell us about what comes next, maybe even a timeline?
Well, the timeline I would say would be probably the week after next. We'll go back into session, and we have about a 3-week period there where we will take up and pass another COVID-19 response bill. What the components of it are, I can't tell you completely because there's been a lot of work behind the scenes on various ideas. We know that a direct payment to individuals was done initially because they needed some financial help when they, through no fault of their own, had no income. And we expanded unemployment insurance. We provided paycheck protection program to small businesses. Those seem to work pretty well, but there are other parts of it that I think we may need to reprogram some of the money we've already appropriated to put it in other places where the money could be used while we rebuild out of this recession that we've literally been in.
Senator Cornyn has been in office since 2002. He is currently running for his 4th term in the Senate. This primary runoff is the first time we're seeing changes at polling places due to COVID-19, but voters are still turning out. Up next, we'll look closer at some of the big races in Texas that are bringing people to the polls. Despite worries about the coronavirus, voters are still turning out for the runoff elections in Texas. Travis County Clerk Dana DeBeauvoir believes voter turnout could reach 20% on Tuesday. That may not sound like much, but a typical runoff usually draws turnout in the single digits. We want to take a closer look at some of the races that are drawing Texans to the polls this time around. So for Insight, we're joined by John Engel, our politics reporter, and our State Bureau reporter, Wes Rappaport. Welcome to both of you.
Hey, Josh.
Thanks. Yeah, so Wes, I want to start with you. This U.S. Senate race has been a bitter one, and policy-wise, these candidates agree on almost everything. So what's causing this divide?
Well, Josh, we'll start in the Royce West camp, and he's really leaning on his experience right now in the state legislature as a state senator for 25 years, and the MJ Hager has accused him of legislating with his own best interests in mind. He has served as a bond attorney for cities and some school districts in the Dallas area. Meanwhile, MJ's loyalty to the Democratic Party now being called into question, West capitalizing on the fact that Hager voted in the Republican presidential primary in 2016. That has also come up here. She's got the benefit of the backing of some of the national groups and has raised millions of dollars. What started as sort of a relatively mild runoff, all things considered, has now really turned into kind of a full sprint to determine who's going to face John Cornyn in November.
And John, we heard your interview with Senator Cornyn earlier, and his campaign has attacked both West and Hager. Is he trying to elevate one over the other at this point?
It's an interesting question. I think both candidates would answer differently in that runoff. But in the messaging that you're hearing from the Cornyn camp and seeing in their emails and in tweets from Senator Cornyn, I think it's pretty obvious that those attacks are more focused on MJ Hager. The messaging in the emails are saying that Royce West is narrowing the gap. The advertisements that hit radio and TV with nearly $100,000 ad spend painted Royce West as the ultra-liberal in this race and painted MJ Hager as someone we don't know anything about. So MJ took that as an attack on her and Cornyn feeling threatened by her candidacy. I think that's how a lot of people did read into that. But it's hard to tell. We haven't seen Cornyn be very involved recently, but he's starting to ramp that up now.
Now, John, it's not just the Senate. Democrats are hoping to flip a few other congressional seats in Texas. There's a tight race to determine who will challenge Republican Michael McCaul in November, right?
That's right, in Texas's 10th congressional district. And that's a race that in 2018, Mike Siegel was the Democratic nominee, losing only by 5 percentage points. That's a race that many of the political watch groups label as likely Republican, but isn't out of reach. Now, Dr. Pritesh Gandhi is a strong candidate in his own right. He is more middle of the road, I would say, more in the realm of a Biden kind of like candidate. Mike Siegel, on the other hand, is pro-Green New Deal. He's pro-Medicare for all. He's endorsed by Senators Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. So is more of that progressive wing of the Democratic Party. Dr. Pritesh Gandhi, on the other hand, he is a physician. He's on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic at a nonprofit clinic. He believes in Medicare for all who want it and some of those more moderate to liberal ideals. So interesting to see that Pritesh Gandhi, as this new outsider candidate, has outraised Mike Siegel, even though Siegel came within 5 percentage points of McCaul back in 2018.
Wes, here in Texas, though, a lot of people are looking at the Texas House, the State House, because they're looking to possibly see what's going to happen with redistricting next year, because they'll have a big role in that. Both parties are hoping to flip some seats there, right, Wes?
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to draw your attention to a couple of key races that we are tracking very closely. Got House District 47. It flipped blue last cycle. There's a runoff in the GOP primary to take on incumbent Vicki Goodwin in November. That's between Jennifer Fleck, an Austin attorney who has the backing of the hyper conservative Texas Values, and she is up against an Austin police officer, Justin Berry, who has the endorsement of Governor Greg Abbott. So that's one race. There's also a battle down south of Austin in Hayes County, House District 45. Republican Carrie Isaac runs a group she touts as a nonprofit that helps disabled veterans. She's up against the Hayes County Republican Party General Counsel Bud Wymore. They are in a runoff, of course, to win back the seat that Isaac's husband vacated in 2018. The winner there will challenge incumbent Aaron Zwiener, who flipped the seat blue last cycle as well. And
we know that you both will be all over the runoffs on Tuesday. Thank you so much for making time for us today.
Thanks, Josh.
Thanks.
It could take a little longer to get the results of the runoffs. Many counties had a sharp increase in demand for mail-in ballots. Those can take longer to count. It's one thing we'll be keeping track of on election night. Thank you for joining us for State of Texas. I'm Josh Hinkle. This is a crucial time for Texas. Do what you can to help stop the spread of the virus. Stay safe, stay informed. We'll be back next week to bring you an in-depth look at Texas politics. Have a great day.